So, I am the founder and CEO of Dineamic Media Group. My name is Jake Corday, and our mission is to redefine the way bars and restaurants communicate with their customers. Perfect. Okay. So, I'm sure all of you eat out, and you have seen those in bars and restaurants, which is a table tent. And the problem with the table tent is that it has been the same solution for bars and restaurants to communicate with their customers for the last 100, 200 years. And in the digital age, it's become completely ineffective. So they're very flimsy, they get broken, they get thrown in the trash. It's hard to change the messaging out on them. If you have an event that happens, a month later it's still there because you have to print it, you have to distribute it across your restaurant, so the messaging stays stagnant, and no one really pays attention to them in the digital age. We all have our smartphones and television screens and computers, and all of that is so engaging that static messaging just doesn't really do the job anymore. So I thought about that problem about 2 years ago, and I started thinking about how I could do it better. And I have a technology background, which I'll get into later. But ultimately, I started prototyping, and what I came up with was, well, it's called a digital table tent. And so this is a brand new way for bars and restaurants to communicate with their customers. And it actually gives them a digital version of the paper table tent that they can update online through an online platform. And basically, let's see. This thing is still working.
Technical difficulty?
Technical, all right, either way, I can talk about it while the screen is up. So basically, I have these devices at the point of sale in bars and restaurants, which is the bar or the table, and it gives the bar or the restaurant the opportunity, there we go. There's some pictures of them out in the field, but it gives the bar and the restaurant the opportunity to talk about appetizers, desserts, upcoming events, different promotions they're having in a really effective way that catches people's eye and makes a difference. The way the business model works is that I give these out to bars and restaurants for free, and then I have brands like Bud Light or Bacardi or Coca-Cola come in and advertise now at the point of sale in a much more effective way, where previously they had to rely on maybe a coaster that said like Bud Light on it or a poster on the wall. Now they actually have an engaging digital medium within the bar and the restaurant, and they can change out the messaging as often as they like to keep it fresh and engaging. I mentioned this a second ago. Basically, we have an online platform where the bars and the restaurants and the brands can go on and they can update their content, whether that's images, videos, and they can set different distribution settings so that different things show up when they're relevant, whether it's the weekend or during a happy hour, whatever it is. Also, our devices charge people's phones. This is a big problem right now in the hospitality space. Everyone is out and about and their phone dies, and they're asking the wait staff, do you have an outlet? Do you have a phone charger? They never do, so I'm helping solve that problem. Our go-to-market strategy, there's about 1 million bars and restaurants in the US. Yeah, it's all right. It's about 200,000 in the Southeast, so that's kind of where I'm targeting to begin with. The strategy is to start with chain concepts. So that could be sports bar chains like Wildman Cafe or Carolina Ale House, or casual dining chain like Firebirds, or maybe a fast casual chain like Clean Juice or Jersey Mike's. Basically, we partner with groups like that, and that helps us expand very quickly. We kind of get the process down with that group and then expand out to all their locations. Here are some examples up there. It's working good? Nice. There are some examples of advertisers. So the restaurant gets a portion of the advertising time and the brands get a portion of the advertising time. So it could be suppliers to the restaurants like Anheuser-Busch or Coca-Cola, but it could also be folks like Uber or the Hornets who just want to get in front of people in the community. Let's see. Go to market size, go to market. Our traction, we launched in October in 7 restaurants around Charlotte. And for about 6 months, we just stayed in those 7 locations and optimized the whole process. So working on getting the web dashboard to where it needs to be, working with the restaurant staff to make sure there's a repeatable process that they do. Ultimately, we recently raised a seed round in July. And by the end of October, we're going to be in over 100 restaurants around Charlotte. It's pretty exciting. We have partnerships with several of the regional chain concepts, as well as some of the large beverage brands who are going to be the advertisers on the platform. A little background on myself. I was a classic nerdy kid on his computer who learned how to program from a very early age. When I was in college, I had a mobile app startup, a social media application, led a team of 6 to ultimately launch that application. I have a marketing degree from the University of Florida, so this kind of blends my passion for technology and marketing. I got the chance to work, timer, yeah. So I got the chance to work after graduating in a startup, actually that was based here in Packard Place. I was the 10th team member and one of the very early ops team members. So I got the chance to dive into the nuts and bolts inside of a startup that was well funded. So that was a great part of my entrepreneurial journey. And then I'm also a patented inventor. So I think that hopefully speaks to my ability and passion for innovation. And yeah, I think that's about everything I wanted to get to. Maybe not in the right order that I was planning on, but I will jump back to this slide and I'll go to the panel. Thank you guys. I'll add one more thing. I'm a little jumbled up. I raised a seed round in July, so I'm not exactly raising money right now. So my ask is more just, I found that with myself, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are this way, I tend to barricade myself like at my desk and don't really get out into the community as often as I need to. But whenever I do go to an event like this and meet people, I always find that it's rewarding. We don't have the biggest entrepreneurial community here in Charlotte, but I found it extremely supportive. So I'd be happy to meet any of you, whether you're an investor or just a member of the community and you're interested in what I'm doing. I'd love to talk to you. Thanks.
Great job, Jake. That was hard. That was about as hard as it's going to get. So good job. 5 minutes and all of that. So it was good.
We could have thrown stuff at
Yeah, we could have. Next, we'll bring tomatoes next time. So, but you did a great job with all that to deal with. So we've talked a little bit before. Love the idea for this. I think that, I'm surprised that restaurants and bars don't already have this. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great solution for what they want to do. I'd love to hear a little bit more. You talked about the advertisers. I'd love to hear if you have some traction there. That would have been a piece that I'd like. And it sounded like you have 7 of the bars and restaurants now. Just hearing a little bit about how that's going. And you said you got the seed round in July. Congratulations. That's a huge milestone. And would have loved to hear what did you use it for? Have you already used it? How is that going to propel you forward from this point on? And then the business model, you've told it to me previously. I didn't quite hear it in this one, probably because of all that was going on, but would love to hear a little bit more about the business model and then also the market size. I know that it's huge. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how huge, but love the product and can't wait to see how it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think so this is far enough along where it's like, okay, there's meat on the bone here. You have money in the bank. And again, I'm coming from the investor mindset. Like if I'm going to give you 10 or 15 minutes or you're going to give me 10 or 15 minutes, like what do I want to get out of that 10 or 15? So I think, a lot more on what you've learned since, I don't know, the 7 locations. I would be more specific about what they are. I don't know if you're concerned about that, but I would do more testimonial quotes, like have the GM or the owner or whatever it is, testimonials from 3 of the top brands that I would recognize as an investor, hopefully, and then kind of use that to kind of validate your theory on value proposition. So that's another cool thing about getting the prototype out versus the first 2 pitches are kind of, call it prototype coming to market. You're like prototype in market. So with a prototype in market pitch, show me what the market thinks, and then show me how those learnings actually correlate to your view and your theory of change on how this is going to change the industry. So I think that would tighten up a lot. And then, business model as well. I think I got it. I'm like, yeah, I get that. I have more concerns about the business model than I do kind of interest, just because I'm like, wow, ad sales, that seems really tough. So yeah, think about ways to kind of de-risk what would otherwise seem as this kind of mundane, like, oh, now you've got to go hire 50 ad salespeople with my money. Wow, that's going to be interesting. Because I don't know how much more iteration you have to do on the hardware and software of this. So that might be the other gap at this stage with something this far along is like, here's what I did, here's what I learned on the hardware side, very, very resilient. It's going to have a shelf life of 18 months, right? Because again, the investor mindset was like, how much money are we going to burn replacing these darn things when people, spill Miller Lite on it or something like that, right? Or drop it off the table. So just get into that. Here's what I've learned. Here's what's happening. Here's the testimonials, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to feed your view on product and how you're going to evolve the approach and go to market and scale. So that'd really be the only things I would say would get, again, me hooked on that next conversation. So when you're doing a Series A, whenever your seed runs out, when you're ready to go to the next level, like I'm already mentally there. Because I think you're at that stage where you want to start cultivating relationships with real institutional investors who know restaurant, food service. This is a pretty crowded space. I actually was advising a small investment in a startup in Boston that was focused on back of the house, digitization of information, really managing the wait staff. Really hard to put new tech into restaurants because restaurants want to work how they've always worked, right? A manager shows up, opens the store, and they just make food and beverage until it closes, right? So be sensitive to some of those dynamics and like explain what you're learning and how you're gonna work and win in that environment. But yeah, very clear on what you do, so I like that. Yeah, anyway, really cool.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think because of the 5-minute pitch format,
Yeah.
I've been working on this, for 2 years, so it's like I can talk about it for 5 hours. But I really tried to make sure that I just got across like, all right, here's what I'm doing, and then there definitely could be more about the traction, and the partnerships, and the business model. I agree with that, but I appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
Do you want to answer those questions?
Sorry, one more point. If you're going to spend time like out in the community, as you said, you're like, hey, you just want to be heads down jamming on your product and your company. But when you do get out, like it's precious time for you, right? So it's, hey, I'm an investor. I've got precious time. Your time is actually more valuable probably than my time, quite frankly, because you're burning daylight and people's money. So I would really like hone in on like, here are the 1 or 2 things I want to accomplish in the next year with this thing, right? Like, okay. I prove the device, works. I.e., there's some hardware engineering here, or you bought this thing from a third-party manufacturer. So it's like hardware works. You're a software guy. The software's working. We're gonna improve here, here, and here. And then I feel that now that I've done those things, like I can get to 1,000 locations, right? Because that's where I'm like, okay, it's 7 restaurants. You said you were going to 100, I think, or 100 locations.
Yeah. So technically, I'm in 11 right now.
11, okay.
50 in September, 50 in October.
So kind of just start building content on slides that would allow you to explain that if the slides are going to be your format, or just get it so nailed in the verbal delivery that like the audience is like, wow, he's already kind of thought through the ramp. Because that's where you're going to get this. That's where things break. Is like, okay, like or whatever, 11 locations to 100. Like that's a 10x growth rate. Like that's awesome, but like hardware breaks, right? Software, it breaks. So let's talk about how we're not going to break as you scale.
Right, definitely. Yep. That is, I'll say this. That is why I started the first 7 locations. It was literally 6 months. I didn't expand into one more place because I wanted to make sure that I was ready for that ramp.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well optimized at this point, and I'm
cool.
Obviously ready for the growth. But
yeah. So hit more of those points. You're good. Yep.
So what are you using the seed round for, Jake, to go back to that? That would help to say, okay, we've got 11, we're going to 100, we just got the seed round, here's what we're doing in the next 2 months with that money.
Sure, yeah, so a few things. Inventory is a big one because I have to put the inventory out there before the ad revenue starts coming in on a monthly basis, so I have to invest in it to begin with. Inventory, product development on the software side. I'm the only full-time team member, but I have some contract software developers I work with. So improving that product, and then also doing some product dev on the hardware side. So I'm working with Inventus partners here in town on an updated version of the hardware. So that requires some upfront investment as well.
That's great.
Cool.